Good afternoon. I appreciate your attention and commitment after a full day of insightful presentations. I'd like to offer a perspective that shifts from the familiar images of archaeology, from trowels and brushes to excavations, GPSs, and documentation with strict timelines. Development led archaeology, particularly in Scotland, is not only reshaping how we work, but also how we collaborate across the disciplines and engage with the public. This talk will explore how evolving practice in redefining precision's purpose and public value in archaeological landscapes. Today I'll be sharing my insights from the Tay Street and Shore Road excavations in Perth as part of the Scottish Water Super Sewer project. This development-led project provided us with a rare opportunity to access deeply buried urban layers, revealing fragments of what could have been Perth's medieval harbour, the waterworks, and potentially the citadel. Spoiler, it was not there. As a local archaeologist, it's been a privilege to explore the hidden history beneath the streets that I know so well, allowing me to reflect on how infrastructure upgrades can unexpectedly enrich our archaeological record. I've kept the photos to a minimum of the project due to the fact that we were working with live sewage. The Tay Street and Shore Road excavations took place between July 2023 and March 2025, with varying weather conditions from wet wild winters to very hot summers and stormy autumns. During this talk, we will examine factors gained from the project and lessons that can be learned. I will give you a brief overview of the historical background of Tay Street Shore Road and what we hope to find, what the project was and how it was conducted, and the key findings. I will also discuss development-led archaeology and how development-led archaeology can help to support public archaeology. Sorry, I went back there. The excavations at Tay Street and Shore Road demonstrated continuous adaptations to the riverbank, from the medieval harbour activities to the early industrial expansion of residential development. The sewer route follows the same ground where centuries of development have reshaped the Tays riverbank. The 16th century Perth relied heavily on the River Tay for trade, but silting issues led to the relocation of the medieval harbour, which had been in use since the 12th century. The Borough Council established the New Haven Harbour in the mid 1500s on the southeast edge of the town. The New Haven Harbour became Perth's main trading hub. However, by the early 17th century, and competition from Dundee and silting led to its decline. And in 1987, the archaeological excavations confirmed its existence on the old Opera House, which was a church. In the mid 17th century, following the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, Oliver Cromwell ordered a series of fortifications across Scotland to secure the control of the boroughs. Around 1652, his engineers constructed Cromwell's citadel on the south inch on the south end of the town. His massive earth and stone fort, with angular bastions, barracks, and magazines facing the River Tay. Although demolition in the early 1700s, its presence permanently altered the topography of the riverbank, setting a defence platform that later became the focus for industry and infrastructure. This was then returned to the citadel was then returned to the town by King Charles after Cromwell's death, and subsequently dismantled. The early 19th century civic improvement had replaced military strategy. The focus turned to flood control and trade across the city, then town. In 1805, Thomas Hay Marshall and his father-in-law Thomas Anderson began planning Tay Street, with the construction starting in and around 1809 and completing in around 1885, with an elegant embankment boulevard running parallel to the river. It served both as a flood defence and a showpiece for this Perth's Georgian expansion, linking the old High Street with new civic buildings such as the County Buildings and St Matthew's Church. The creation of Tay Street also redefined the shoreline, reclaiming ground once occupied by the citadel's ramparts. North of the town, the shore road emerged later in the 19th century as part of a broader programme of industrial access and river management. It provided transport links to the harbour and supported the city's growing commercial warehouses and timber yards. Alongside these developments came Perth Waterworks, founded in 1832. It was one of Scott's earliest municipal water supply systems, designed to draw clean water in from the Tay and distributed through the town. Establishment of the waterworks marked a decisive shift towards public health reform, a civic response to sanitary conditions of urban growth. However, this had been discussed intensively prior to this, and there is sources in the archive that suggest it goes back to the 16th and 17th century. The High Street excavations in Perth, conducted between 1975 and 1977, marked the turning point in how archaeology was managed in Scotland. At this time, the redevelopment of historic towns was proceeding rapidly, and much of Perth's medieval core, deeply stratified and waterlogged, was under real threat. The excavation stepped in as one of Scotland's first large-scale rescue projects. What made it so influential was its scale and professionalism. For the first time, a team of full-time archaeologists worked systematically across an entire urban block, revealing remarkably well-preserved timber buildings, streets, artefacts that completely reshaped our understanding of medieval urban life. Crucially, it demonstrated that development-driven archaeology could still produce high-quality research. That success directly fed into the policy change and creation of urban archaeology units, new systems for recording and mitigation, and eventually the development funded model embedded in the policy law today. In short, Perth provided archaeology that could coexist with urban growth, and with that, right frameworks developed could actually advance rather than destroy our understanding of the past. The Super Sewer was a watching brief conducted by AOC Archaeology Group on behalf of Scottish Water as part of Tay Street and Shore Road sewer upgrade in Perth in Scotland. This project ran from, as I said, July to March 2025 and covered three key areas: Tay Street, Shore Road, and the temporary compound on the Lesser South Inch. The work situated within the central conservation area adjacent to the historically significant sites such as Cromwell's Citadel and the Greyfriar burial ground. The primary objective was to safeguard any archaeological resources potentially impacted by the sewer upgrade. Our team monitored all groundbreaking works, including topsoil strip and trench excavation, using mechanical excavators and hand digging where appropriate. The trenches that we were digging were 4 metres by 5 metres by approximately 4.5 metres deep, so this was challenging. We were digging down in plan rather in section. The trenches were excavated to depths of 4.5 metres, with shoring installed for safety. All features of interest were recorded, sampled, and catalogued in accordance with AOC's standard procedures. In section 1, Tay Street, we uncovered two sandstone drainage features. The first, 1008, was a revetment constructed with dressed sandstone and lime mortar, likely associated with the early 16th century New Haven harbour. The second was a probable culvert. It was highly truncated, but was filled with black ash, suggesting industrial activity. The stratigraphy here reflected the infilling of Tay Street's basin with waste and industrial debris. Glass, ceramics, slag, and all manner of things were used to reclaim the land from the river. Section 2, Shore Road, lies adjacent to the Cromwell Citadel, a scheduled monument located in the South Inch car park. While no excavations entered the protected areas, we did record two sandstone culverts within the pipeline running east to west. Culverts were constructed with sandstone and lime mortar with grey slabs. Their similarity suggests that they were contemporary. However, they are likely modern. We also identified several linear features, likely related to drainage through limited access. Though limited access prevented full assessment, samples were taken where feasible. At the compound site in Lesser South Inch, we monitored the topsoil strip for the construction of the temporary compound. Here we found a midden deposit in a small pit containing ceramic, glass, slag, and rubble. The small pit was excavated and filled with what looked to be burnt bone and ash. However, we are still waiting on post-ex coming back from that. Among the small finds was a Queen Victoria halfpenny dated in 1863, recovered during the topsoil removal in the Lesser South Inch. On that slide there, you can see one of the culverts with the cap and stones removed. We removed the cap and stones to see that it was it wasn't live. As I said, we had many finds, including the Queen Victoria halfpenny. In conclusion, the watching brief successfully documented historical modifications along the River Tay shore. The discovery of the drainage structures, industrial fill, and isolated features contribute to our understanding of the evolving urban landscape from medieval religious sites to the 19th century industrial expansion. Slide there, there is three finds that are my favourite. So there is the Queen Victoria halfpenny, there is the shoe, which is likely to be 19th century to 20th century, and a bottle that got broken while we were there by one of the clumsy construction workers. It stumped me because I can't find where it came from. It says, you can just briefly see on it, it says A. Dingwall, Wine and Spirit Merchant, Perth. I can't find a resource for them. The fieldwork is now complete, allowing us to monitor the deep excavations that wouldn't have occurred without the sewer upgrade. We documented structural remains, soil layers, and artefacts that hint at Perth's early harbour and civic infrastructure. Yet some expected features like Cromwell Citadel were absent, much to my disappointment. It must be said that although I was disappointed in the quantity of archaeology, it was not void of archaeology. We did, however, find a large assemblage of modern ceramic, shoes, wood, glass, and multitude of other things, which some may go under post-excavation analysis. However, it is thought to be quite likely modern. The fieldwork observations on which this talk is based is completed, however, it is in the early stages of post-ex. As I said, The fieldwork did shed light on the development of Tay Street and Shore Road, as well as some of the workings of the waterworks. Some nice pipes were found underneath the sewer when it was removed. The absence of features raises questions such as, are the historical records flawed or misunderstood? Has urban development erased key evidence prior to the change in planning? Or how do we reconcile with gaps in the archaeological record when what we think we know from the documents is missing? The planning process was passed in 1972 with the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act. However, it was not until the late 1980s when it was formally integrated into the planning process. If it was not for this change in legislation, developer-led archaeology may look very different. It was not until the 1990s that it was formally integrated as part of the process, and by the 2000s, it was standard practice. So the question might be, when we're talking about what has been removed, is what has been removed between the development of Tay Street and Shore Road in the 19th century and the development of the super sewer. We know that between the planning of Tay Street in 1805 and the installation of the super sewer, there were many modifications to the area, such as the construction of the waterworks, which was completed in 1832, the Perth Viaduct, which was completed in 1863, as well as many alterations to the roads that were observed during the works. However, the river may also be a factor in this. Projects like this challenge traditional image of archaeologists working slowly with trowels and brushes. Today, much of the work involves heavy machinery, rapid documentation, and close collaboration with engineers, planners, and communities, requiring different kinds of precision and adaptability. In Scotland, developer-led archaeology accounts for around 90% of all fieldwork. It is driven by construction and planning regulations. Unlike academic archaeology, which focuses on long-term research, this commercial work produces large data sets that inform national research frameworks and increasingly engages in public through museums, outreach, and education, helping to preserve heritage while enriching cultural understanding. Unfortunately, the Super Sewer project reminds us that archaeology isn't just about what we find, it's about how we interpret it, communicate it, and connect with it. Tay Street Shore Road excavations, undertaken as part of the Scottish Water Super Sewer project, have provided a unique lens through which we view evolving landscapes of urban archaeology in Perth. From the outset, this development was challenging traditional perceptions of archaeology, shifting the focus from meticulous excavation to rapid multidisciplinary collaboration. The historical background revealed centuries of adaptation to the Tay Street shoreline, from the medieval harbour through to Cromwell Citadel and the industrial expansion. Development-led archaeology now is a dominant model in Scotland and has transformed both practice and public perception of the discipline. It produces large data sets, as I said, but is increasingly informing national research frameworks and increasingly engages in public through outreach education, despite the constraints of commercial timescales and limited on-site participation. Unfortunately, this project highlights that archaeology is not just about what we found, but how these findings are interpreted, communicated, and connected with the wider community. By sharing discoveries and fostering public engagement, the developer-led archaeology serves as a bridge between the past and the present, specialists and the public, and reminds us that beneath our street lies stories awaiting to be uncovered. I'm skipping a few because I'm over time. I would like to extend my thanks to the AOC team that accompanied me on Tay Street, as well as those that stayed behind for me to drop stuff off late, and who also listened to me discuss this project for many years. There's also a wee thanks to Derek and Eva for their advice in preparing this talk, and to the Scottish Water team, particularly Nav and Jim from Caledonian Water Alliance, and a very special thanks to Jacob, who patiently endured the cold and unpleasant conditions with me. Thank you.